I will tell you, Director Deutsch, as a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
Welcome back to another video, guys. So today I want to talk about the CIA's involvement in the crack cocaine epidemic of the 1980s. It's a subject of ongoing controversy, but is there any truth in it? Well, yes, a lot. Often brought into public discourse due to the allegations presented by journalist Gary Webb in the 1990s. Webb's reporting and its aftermath sparked debates about the role of the government agencies in drug trafficking and devastating consequences of the crack epidemic on American inner-city communities. The allegations centre around the idea that the CIA, either directly or indirectly, facilitated the spread of crack cocaine as a way to fund anti-communist rebels known as the Contras in Nicaragua. Though Webb's claims have been widely disputed by some government officials and researchers, the broader story remains one of the most significant chapters in the history of US drug policy. The crack cocaine epidemic reached its peak in the mid-1980s, particularly in urban neighbourhoods where drugs were already an entrenched part of the underground economy. Crack, which is a cheap and potent form of cocaine, flooded US cities and contributed to the destabilisation and already struggling communities. Its widespread use led to soaring addiction rates, increased crime and mass incarceration, particularly among African American and Latino communities. The epidemic's destructive power was further compounded by the lack of effective public resources and the media's sensationalized coverage, which often portrayed drug users as criminals rather than individuals that needed support. Now, the US government, led by President Ronald Reagan at the time, responded with strict drug laws such as mandatory minimum sentences and a war on drugs, which disproportionately targeted low-income and minority communities. The impact of these policies continue to be debated, as they are often seen as exacerbating social inequalities and contributing to mass incarceration, rather than addressing the root causes of drug addiction and trafficking problems. The most prominent attempt to link the CIA to the crack epidemic came in 1996 when Gary Webb, a journalist for the San Jose Mercury News, published investigative articles under the title Dark Alliance. The series alleged that drug dealers in Los Angeles, many of whom were connected to the Nicaraguan Contra rebels, had been selling cocaine in the US with the knowledge and possible support of the CIA. Webb's investigation was based on interviews with former drug traffickers, court records, and government reports, suggesting that the money generated from the sale of cocaine was used to fund the Contras' fight against the Sandinista government in Nicaragua, which was left-wing and had close ties to the Soviet Union. The report implied that the CIA was either complicit in or actively turned a blind eye to the drug trafficking operation, as it aligned with US foreign policy goals during the Cold War. The Contra War was seen as part of the broader struggle against communist influence in Central America, and the CIA had been heavily involved in supporting the Contra rebels. Webb suggested that the influx of crack cocaine into poor urban neighbourhoods was not merely a coincidence, but was in part the result of US government action that sought to undermine leftist governments in Latin America. The reaction to Webb's Dark Alliance series generated an immediate and significant response, particularly from the African American communities, who felt that their neighbourhoods had been deliberately targeted for drug distribution. The allegations seemed to confirm long-held suspicions that the US government was willing to engage in morally questionable actions, even harming its own citizens, to achieve its political objectives. However, the response from the mainstream media outlets and government officials was overwhelmingly negative, of course. Many major newspapers, including the New York Times and the Washington Post, criticised Webb's work for lacking definitive proof and for making broad claims without sufficient evidence. The CIA itself denied any involvement in drug trafficking, of course, and issued statements asserting that it had never knowingly aided drug dealers. Webb's sources were also questioned, and his investigation was called into doubt by critics who argued that it was more sensational than factual. However, in the wake of the controversy, in 1997, Webb was reassigned and later left the San Jose Mercury News. The media backlash ultimately overshadowed his work. His credibility was undermined, and the scandal surrounding his reporting has been as one of the key reasons why the public has not fully accepted the allegations of the CIA complicity in the crack epidemic. Whether or not the CIA was directly responsible for the spread of crack cocaine, it is clear that the US government's policies in Latin America and its approach to drug control had far-reaching consequences for marginalized communities in the US. Now, the accusations against the CIA align with broader concerns about covert government activities and the willingness of the US agencies to prioritize political objectives over the well-being of American citizens, though not conclusively proven in relation to the CIA, remains a tragic example of the intersection of Cold War policies and domestic harm. Gary Webb's investigation ignited a firestorm of public debate that raised essential questions about accountability, transparency, and the ethical boundaries of government power. In my humble opinion, there are no countries, only businesses, and money makes the world go round. And the psychopaths in charge of this world won't let silly things like ethics or innocence get in the way of a nice profit. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe out there.